This is Newcap News.
The official numbers are in from Lloydminster civic election, and it shows more than double the voters compared to 2012. But who voted and where? Gina Martin explains.
6,085 voters hit the polls in Lloydminster, a stark contrast from the 2,934 who voted in 2012. There were a few differences in this year's process, including an additional polling location and an amped-up advertising campaign costing $20,000.
Our biggest polls were in the Service Sports Centre, and that was our poll 1 and 2, and we saw the largest turnout there, and it was about 1,300 voters. Our advanced polls were really strong as well, with about 1,000 voters as well.
The Service Sports Centre polls are located in College Park, where the median age is 31.9 years old and households contain mostly 2 to 4 people. This according to the 2013 census. As Rodwell said, the advanced polls were also successful, but many people noted they were going to be away for both the advanced poll and Election Day. Because of this, the city may consider looking into more advanced polls and the possibility of online voting. Even though there was a significant jump in voters, it only amounted to 30% of the eligible voter turnout, leaving the question, how do you get people motivated to cast their ballot?
The way you begin to get more people interested in city politics is to talk about policies and platforms and ideas and issues that appeal to them, and they then think they can make a difference.
He adds if you are encouraging the same crowd, you're going to get the same results, which perhaps means an entirely different group of people came out to vote in October as a new mayor and almost entirely new council have been sworn in. Gina Martin, Newcap News.
The crime reduction strategies implemented by Inspector Suki Manj during his time here in Lloydminster are still in place today. We check in with Staff Sergeant Brent Sawatzky regarding some of those strategies and how they've been successful. Staff Sergeant Brent Sawatzky joining me from the Lloydminster RCMP, currently the detachment's interim commander. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you of course came to the detachment in the wake of Inspector Suki Manj's departure. He was the driving force behind many initiatives centering around crime reduction. Can you touch on what some of those were and just how effective they've been?
Absolutely. Again, the crime reduction strategy is a different approach to policing as opposed to the, if I may, cuff 'em and stuff 'em type of approach. In this program, it's in the way Inspector Manch had it arranged was that there was different parts of it. For example, we have a comp stat, which is a program developed in the States several years ago. And what that is we have a criminal analyst employed with the city, and that criminal analyst will take the statistics and give our members specific areas to focus on. And we refer to them as hotspots. So if there's a hotspot in a certain part of the city, we flood that area, we spend a lot of time in that area. So that's one component of it. The prolific offender is one of the mainstays of the program, and in Lloydminster there was 20 offenders that were identified. Of the 20 that were identified this year, 3 have moved to different jurisdictions. So displacement is a way that we've dealt with those as well. 8 are currently incarcerated, facing extensive jail time. 5 of them, of the offenders that identified are facing serious charges, but they are abiding by the terms and conditions of their release, which is a positive for us. 3 have shown significant contact with the RCMP, which is again a positive, and 1 is actually our real success story is the fact that this individual has worked with the agencies and been very successful. Has had employment for the past year, and definitely a success story. That particular individual went from 25 negative contacts with the RCMP down to 0. In the past year, since the program was initiated, we've seen a 5% drop in our people that we held in custody and a 5.7% decrease in calls for service. So it may not sound like a huge decrease, however, it does have an impact. And again, this was kind of the inaugural year of it, so we anticipate better things to come. And in fact, we're going to be planning here in the coming weeks where we go, like we're going to evaluate the program as it sits now, and then we're going to take that and we're going to run with it, try and develop new strategies that will help us increase those numbers.
Well, now that the colder temperatures are starting to take hold, colds are running rampant in workplaces all over town. People are looking for the fastest cure possible, but doctors and pharmacists say the mind plays as big a role as any possible treatment. Josh Ryan has more in this week's Healthy Living.
Sneezing, sniffling, coughing, the hallmarks of cold season are in full effect this fall. As everyone looks for the perfect remedy, ultimately washing out the cold is the only guaranteed cure.
It's really touch and go as to what's going to work best for each individual person, but that rest and dehydration remain hallmarks of treatment.
Resting is key, but that doesn't mean staying in bed all week. Dr. Raf Saeed says exercising is still okay, just as long as you scale back.
Not to the point of exhaustion like they used to, because again, you need to give your body a chance to fight. Exercise does help immunity, but now that you've got a cold, you don't want to make things worse. So
the rest allows your body to have its maximum fighting capacity against the cold.
There are a number of over-the-counter solutions, but Malik says there's no definitive choice.
Cough syrups to decongestants, maybe a throat lozenge to soothe a sore throat. There's many different brands, many different components that are available for people.
With food and drink, the choices are a little more specific, avoiding lots of sugar and leaning towards general healthy eating.
Lots of fresh fruits, vegetables, and drink lots of fluids.
To help spare someone else catching your cold, the most effective strategy is to simply wash your hands.
Those hands end up touching our membranes, and then whether that's through eyes, nose, mouth, then the virus is in us, and then we develop the cold symptoms. So frequent hand washing is an excellent way to prevent that spread.
And ultimately, the healing process will start when your mind is at ease.
If your mind is cured, then the body will cure itself as well.
Josh Ryan, Newcap News.
Well, if you haven't bought any Christmas gifts yet, this weekend might just be the time to start as the Christmas Craft Fair returns to Lloydminster. Vendors were working hard today in preparation of the big event. By tomorrow, all these booths will be filled with close to 300 vendors for the 28th annual event, offering everything from crafts to toys and more.
We have a gun show as well in the Wild Rose Pavilion. A good place for the men to go while the women do their shopping.
Organizers say to be prepared, though at least around 12,000 people attended.
It's better to come earlier in the day when it's not quite so crowded. But if you don't mind the crowds, come and enjoy yourself. There's lots to see and lots of different vendors.
And the Christmas Craft Fair runs Friday to Sunday, and the doors open at 10 a.m. Well, coming up, convicted sex offender Gordon Stuckless is facing a slew of new charges. Details when we come back.
Stocks and oil prices are brought to you by Spectrum Restoration DKI. Across the street, across the Midwest, restoring confidence. Spectrum Restoration DKI.
Convicted sex offender Gordon Stuckless was back before a judge in Toronto today, facing a slew of new charges. The man at the heart of the Maple Leaf Gardens sex abuse scandal is accused of sexually assaulting 3 boys more than 30 years ago. He's also facing charges of gross indecency and threatening death. Police allege the incidents happened between 1978 and 1984. Stuckless is already serving a 6-year prison sentence. According to a new study, Toronto is the child poverty capital of Canada. Second was Montreal. Winnipeg was third. The report released by several agencies calls for more government funding to reverse this trend. CTV's Peter Ackman reports.
It's hard to tell by the smiles and laughter on the playground, but this Toronto neighborhood is the child poverty capital of Canada.
There was a lot of shootings here, so say people called it the ghetto and they didn't really want to be around here.
Trishana Charles was born and raised in the Regent Park community. She lives in subsidized housing, but the 15-year-old doesn't feel poor.
I don't know what else I might need. I don't have fancy Beat headphones or fancy Jordans, but I'm content with what I have.
But a new study into the state of Canadian children is much less optimistic, estimating 20% or 1.2 million kids are living in poverty.
We hope Canadians will be surprised and angered and ready to take action.
Contrary to public perception that Canada is a great country to raise kids, compared to other affluent nations, it ranks 17th in children's well-being. 1/3 have experienced abuse, 1/4 are obese, and every 9 hours, a child dies of preventable injuries.
We need to find a way to make more determined progress and to make it happen faster.
In 1989, the federal government committed to ending child poverty in 15 years. Since then, millions have grown up hungry, cold, and poor. This study found 20% of children have considered killing themselves.
I've met kids who look me in the eye and say they feel like their lives don't matter because they don't feel like anybody is listening to them.
Those stats jump exponentially for First Nation children. Many of their community leaders doubt enough money will ever be committed to begin fixing the issues.
The Aboriginal child, unfortunately, is easily taken off the list of priorities because Aboriginal children don't vote. They are a moral problem. They are not a political problem.
Wednesday, the head of dozens of major corporations and organizations came together to raise money and to begin holding the government accountable to finally end what they call Canada's greatest crisis. Peter Ackman, CTV News, Toronto.
Sports is brought to you by
Nissan Lloydminster, Titan XD. Come test drive the all-new Titan today. Nissan Lloydminster, your Titan excellence dealer.
Well, the Lloyd Comp Barons are ready to lace up their cleats, hoping it won't be the last time this season. The Barons will head to Grand Prairie this weekend for the regional semi-final game. Bailey Nitty reports.
It was a hard-fought match against the Paul Kane Blues that came right down to the wire, but the Barons came out on top late in the fourth, defeating the Blues 22-15.
It was nice to come back and win a game. We've played with a lead for most of the year, and when we got behind this year, we've kind of struggled and got down on ourselves. But I think we proved that we're good enough.
With the victory, the Barons will play in the regional finals against the St. Joe Celtics, a team that knocked out the Barons last season.
They're big boys. They're very physical, and we played them last year, and they're a tough team, and they're there to win as much as we want to win.
The focus in practice this week is executing the little things and keeping the energy high. Even though a draining bus ride to GP awaits the Barons, it won't stop them from putting on a game face come game time.
If we play well and we do our job and we execute the way that we can and play to our potential, take care of the football, we'll be just fine.
When asked what the main goal was, the answer was clear.
To get to that Alberta Bowl.
Kickoff is at 2:30 at CKSA Field on Saturday, and if the boys bring home the win, they'll compete in the Alberta Bowl Provincial Final in Calgary on the 25th. Bailey Nitty, Newcap Sports.
And the Bantam AAA Bobcats are headed to Medicine Hat this weekend to compete in the 44th annual Hockey Hounds Major Bantam Tournament. After a slow start to the season and a lack of scoring, the Bantam Bobcats are hoping their weekend in Medicine Hat will be a chance to learn and an opportunity to create success.
It's a big tournament. It's going to be lots of people there, lots of big teams, lots of competition.
The tournament doesn't count for any points or regular season games, but it will give the boys a chance to bond and find ways to produce goals.
it'll be a fun little tournament to get away and kind of relieve some pressure and go out and work on some things that that we can do.
The Bobcats will play a minimum of 3 games, one against Pursuit of Excellence, a hockey prep school from Kelowna, boasting a roster of skilled players from all over Western Canada. Well, it's been a huge challenge to get the harvest done this year. While some producers have been lucky, others have declared agriculture disasters. In this week's Ag Report, Gerard Lampow meets an area producer battling to get harvest done before the next snow flies.
When we started up today, it was testing about 13. It was finally we tried yesterday and it was around 15, but the swaths were too wet. We couldn't put them through the combine.
Rescuing Harvest 2016 is providing some unusual challenges to area producers. This after some 10 to 15 centimeters of snow was on the ground around Thanksgiving, and for some producers in their living memory, all of October they did no combining, even though there was still crop in the field.
You really have to watch out for the wet piles though, because they'll sneak up and and give you a feeder plug.
Keith Fournier and his team are working hard to clear this field, which has over 500 acres of canola. Like many other producers, they remain resilient in the face of old man winter. Fournier has been lucky as several areas have declared an agriculture disaster following the season's first heavy snowfall.
I was talking to a fellow this morning, and he had went out and tested wheat yesterday, and it was well up into the 20%. It wasn't even, couldn't even put it into the bin. He went and just dumped his test.
Producers will aim to get their grain in this fall rather than wait for spring and then aerate it as best they can. Fournier hopes not to have to store the grain for too long. He says the grain companies have greater drying capacity.
The grain that we're putting into the bin, anytime it's above that 10%, which is dry, you really have to monitor it closely. I mean, it could heat on you so quickly, and the value so much that it's just something that you just can't stick it in a bin and walk away from it.
While the first half of November has been kind, producers know that the clock is ticking.
If by chance the weather breaks and we don't get it off until springtime, then that's where the rumors really start coming in, the unknowns come in. I mean, what happens, is it saleable come spring? They say that the oil content really drops down, and so the elevator companies don't want to take it.
Gerard Lampow, Newcap News.